Hello, my name is Brent Carpenetti, founder of CC Tutors, or Carpenetti Calculus if you want to use our quote-unquote full name. Thanks for joining us at our GMAT class session preview. Before we get started into any of the in-depth training videos or instruction period, I'd like to talk a little bit about the test itself. And the first step to success is understanding the battle that you are about to undertake. The first thing to address is why GMAT scores matter. Again, you've probably heard Mr. Wilson, the CEO of the GMAC, talk about the fact that the test has been proven as a reliable predictor of academic performance for more than half a century. But what exactly does that mean? That means that the GMAT is independent from your specific undergraduate institution. That means that the GMAT is going to measure you, not your school or your work history. So your score is going to be just the same measurement as a score from a student from UT or Vanderbilt or Princeton or Yale or Harvard. Every student that wants to enter into a graduate business program typically needs to sit for the GMAT exam. The question is, are you going to be ready? Let's talk about the things that the current GMAT will measure during the exam. During the analytical writing portion, you will be required to perform an analysis of an argument, where you have to prove that you understand the author's position, critique the reasoning of the author, and cite what evidence would strengthen or weaken the given argument. In the newest section of the GMAT, there's a portion called integrated reasoning. And essentially, the purpose of this section is to determine how one would interact with larger amounts of data. As we can see, technology is vastly changing our world.
But multi-touch has applications beyond graphics. Well, graphs, for example.
And as you can see, you can move the data points around, and here I am taking Paraguay's life expectancy and really increasing it. It's that easy, folks.
What's really easy on a multi-touch display is to navigate overwhelmingly large data sets. Well, the entire animal kingdom, for instance. Not only can you quickly drill down to the details, but in an instant you can pull back to see the greater context of those details, the bigger picture of a bonobo's place in the world, if you will. But perhaps most importantly,
Now, technology like this, and even the technology that you're viewing this presentation on, are changing the way that people interact with one another. And it's creating a large amount of data for businesses to work with and absorb. One of the things that this section of the exam is designed to do is determine how quickly you will be able to sift through what is relevant and irrelevant information in a given problem. Of course, the basic mathematical skills will be tested in the exam during the quantitative portion. And during this section, you will need to prove that your arithmetic skills, your algebra skills, your geometric skills, your word problem skills are sufficient to move quickly through any challenge that's presented by the test. For example, if x plus y is equal to 7 and 3x plus 5y is equal to 25, what is the value of x? These are the kind of problems that are tested in the quantitative section of the exam. Additionally, in the verbal section of the exam, there will be 3 distinct kinds of problems that must be solved. First, you'll have to demonstrate your understanding after reading a passage. You will have to also identify and place evidence assumptions and conclusions within arguments if you've been given specific information as it pertains to those pieces. Finally, if you're presented with a complex sentence, you'll be expected to correct grammatical and structural errors very quickly by our guidance in less than 90 seconds. Now, all of that may be not too big of a deal, but let's cover something that's really important. Every question has a probability density function assigned to each answer choice you can select. What does that mean? Well, that essentially means this test is going to know whether or not you were very close to answering the question, or if you were completely off and were likely to guess. Now, of course, this is not an exact science, but with the astounding capabilities of probability and the predictive nature of the same, this test almost has a mind of its own, and if it senses any weakness, it's likely to exploit it. So, remember the 4 sections we talked about: the analytical writing, the integrated reasoning, the quantitative, and the verbal. Those 4 sections are compiled to give you your score. Now, the analytical writing, that in of itself will be a standalone score. The integrated reasoning will in and of itself be a standalone score. The quantitative section, which covers problem solving and data sufficiency, and the verbal section, which covers sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension, which the sentence correction is self-explanatory. You correct the grammatical errors in the sentences. The critical reasoning is where you are required to analyze an argument quickly and identify the specific portions or pieces of it. And the reading comprehension is likewise self-explanatory. Nevertheless, these 2 sections combine to give a total score between 200 and 800 points. Now, these are the scores that you will hear most people talking about on various message boards. Oh, how'd you do? I made a 720. Oh, how'd you do? I made a 650. When they quote the score, it's the total score, which is combined between the quantitative and the verbal. If you would like to know someone's analytical writing or their integrated reasoning score, you'd have to ask for that specifically. Now, CC and our instructional period focus on the total score components, as they're most heavily weighted by admissions committees. So we will cover the quantitative and verbal content and concepts that you need, not the tricks or tips that some other prep programs might provide. Now, why do we focus our time and energy here? First of all, the writing section will require some individual work. Each person's writing will be something that is on their own to determine. But with the verbal practice and a better understanding of a reading comprehension passage and the better understanding of a grammatical structure of a sentence, it's rather natural that through studying those things, your own writing would improve, or at least your own editing capabilities of your writing. So from that, we encourage students to practice their writing and then go back and edit it themselves to find out where they are strong or weak. Secondly, through practice on the quantitative section, we believe that the integrated reasoning should become likewise much more simple. Because if you can identify how to use specific information to calculate values needed in the quantitative section, we stand to believe that it would also be rather easy to identify information that would be irrelevant in the integrated reasoning section. Now, that's not to say if someone were to request private tutoring time to work specifically on the integrated reasoning or analytical writing that we would refuse that request. Not at all. Rather, it just means that when we're in group and we're in class, the content and concepts that we will be focusing on are the total score components, because they're weighted most heavily by the admissions committees on average, and they're also going to lead to better performance in the other sections. So now that you understand where we're going and why we're going the way that we're going there, we look forward to taking step 2 with you in the process.